Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Today on the show, I want to introduce you to our special guest, who is my sister-in-law, Becky Dugan. And she is a world traveler, an adventurer, and an amazing cook. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really happy to be on your show.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to do this with you because I know you have an amazing story. And I thought we would start out with what it was like for you growing up and how you're connected to food and travel and adventure. And where does all that come from?
Well, I have to say it's actually from my mom. She was part of a gourmet group, and they would pick different countries and make food and host dinner parties at our house.
Oh my gosh.
Gourmet group members, they would each get assigned different parts of the meal. So it'd be like a main dish or a side dish or dessert or whatever. And so I got to experience some of that and, sort of researching the different areas and different food types and the culture and all of that. And my mom, before I was born, actually was a home ec teacher. So she was very involved in food, and just growing up with her and her influence.
I did not know that. That's something
Really?
we never talked about. I'm like, it makes sense now because you're a really good cook, Becky. You are a really good cook. And you always have these creative ideas. It's interesting because we use the eggplant parmesan with the panko breadcrumbs. And that is such a great recipe. And it's just, you come up with these really unique ideas. So I get it now. Now I understand where that connection is. What about the adventure side? Because you have a true adventure side to you, just like my wife, Carrie.
Well, I think when I was in college, I got involved in the outing club and enjoyed going on hiking trips and canoe trips and all kinds of things. And that's actually how I met Bob, was part of being in the outing club. I got wilderness first aid certified. And while I was outside of school and I was working, my wilderness first aid certification had expired. And my friend Chris from school had told me that there was a course being offered where Bob was going to school. So I took the wilderness first aid course, and that's where I met Bob.
That's amazing because most people, I thought about this. I was really thinking deeply, and I'm going, most people meet at a bar, they meet in school, or nowadays they meet online. But you met him in this course, and that's fascinating to me, actually, because you usually don't hear that, and that kind of explains how you both are connected to adventure. And I know, as you grew in your relationship, you started sailing together. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had sailed as a kid through my great uncle. He had a small Pearson ensign off the main summer island that we summer on. He had the boat there, and excuse me, he would take us out sailing. And I had never had any formal sailing lessons until I was an adult. And actually, when I met Bob and we were living in the Boston area, we actually had a membership at the Boston Sailing Center where we took their macro class, which was a learn to sail, advanced sailing, and their cruising course. So that's how we got some more experience. And then we ended up buying our first sailboat, which was a Cape Dory 25D. And then
so
about
25 foot, right?
25 foot. Yep.
Okay.
And then about 10 years ago, we ended up selling that boat and we bought the boat we have now, which is a Pacific Seacraft 34.
Wow.
And that's what we're living on now for this past year.
So how did this planning begin? We're going to kind of work into this and let everybody know that's listening, our family, our friends, and the Voice4Chef audience. Like, how did this idea begin that you were going to sail you live in Boston, and where did you sail to? Where are you now?
So we are in the Caribbean. We are in St. Martin. The planning process for this trip took about 5 years.
Wow.
We have a 16-year-old son on board with us right now. And 5 years ago, he was a little bit different kid than he is now. But
yeah, sure.
We had him as part of the planning process. And we figured that his sophomore year of school would be the best year to do the homeschooling and adventure part of this trip. So
wow. It's amazing.
Yeah, so the boat needs a lot of prep to get ready for the trip. So we did things like we put on a wind vane, and we have a hydro generator to help with power management. And we also had some canvas work done to make the cockpit more enclosed in case we were out in heavy weather, we would be protected. And then there's also just, planning and obviously provisioning the boat, but I think we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely.
But, I think there's a time, I don't know if it's midlife crisis or what, but just like sort of the time is now. Let's take advantage of our health while we have it and the time while we have it. Bob has the luxury or benefit, I would say, of being able to take this year off. And so why not, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would be diving in. But the other things you had to do to prepare, so you rented out your house, which was amazing, right? So you could live somewhere else and you live aboard your sailboat. And that has got to be like an incredible experience. I don't know, though. I have to be honest. If I was living in the Caribbean, I don't know if I could do it because I need my air conditioning and I need cool weather. And Carrie will tell you that I get what's called heat attitude. I get very frustrated when I get hot and sweaty and humid. But that's me.
We've learned that we definitely need cold drinks on board. Ice.
Yeah.
So that was back to prepping the boat. Is our boat had a ice chest, so we would have to put ice in it to keep food cold. And one of the decisions we made was to actually make our ice chest a freezer instead of a refrigerator, because we figured food would keep longer in the freezer than it would be in a fridge. And then I bought a cooler thinking that could kind of act as a fridge. And I use cold packs in there with fresh vegetables, that you buy refrigerated, peppers and, cucumbers and all kinds of stuff. And I just found that the food did not keep very well in that environment at all. It actually got very moist and started rotting, and it just, I think it's just too hot down here for that system to work. I would try to swap out the cold packs to keep food fresh, but the freezer itself has been working out great. And then if I can be at a food open air market where food has not been previously refrigerated, that keeps much better, much longer than food at a refrigerator. So
let's circle back to when you started preparing for this trip. 5 years ago, you're preparing for all the logistics and everything. But as you got closer to the actual sailing, getting ready to go, you're thinking about the food and what to pack and how you're going to do that. Can you walk us through a little bit about that planning? Like, what kind of foods were you taking? What were you thinking about strategy wise?
Well, I want to eat food that I like to eat, right? So you want to pack, you want to pack food that you want on board. And I actually enjoy Indian food, so I made some Indian food ahead of time. I have some favorites like palak paneer, chole, and dal, so I made those ahead of time. And then I also made sure that any pantry is well stocked, but my space is very limited. So I actually repackaged some items like, different oils or vinegars. I put in smaller containers just so that I could have more variety. And I also made sure that I had plenty of dried goods, things like, couscous, bulgur, quinoa, pasta, rice, lentils, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And of course, chocolate.
Oh, yeah. You can't live without chocolate. But what about, like, how small is this space? Just describe what it's like to cook in your environment.
Oh, it's very small. I have this 3-burner stove that has a cover that goes over it, and that is essentially my prep area. And then there's a very small sink, and then there's a trash area that has a built-in cutting board on top of it, but it's not in a practical location to actually try to cut food over that area. So I don't use it. I use the area over the 3-burner stove and then the ice chest. So it's quite small. And I have one cabinet that has my I would say my pantry items, like the oils and vinegars and sauces and that kind of thing. I put everything in that cabinet, and then one shelf full of other, I would say, frequently used, more pantry items. So that was not a lot of space coming from my kitchen in Wayland. It was very, very hard to figure out how to, condense everything into a small area. But
is there anything you would do differently about packing the food aspect of your journey?
So when I made some food ahead of time, I put some of them in glass containers with, the plastic tops, but I also had purchased some collapsible silicone containers, and those are way easier to deal with in terms of a space issue, because once this glass container is empty, I have a hard time finding a space to store it. Okay. So that's one thing, that the more you can condense things, that definitely is a good thing. And then I also bought these silicone bags that I can also put food in, and those are great.
I would have Carrie would tell you, I would have a very hard time with that. Yeah. Because I like my gadgets and
Right. So I
you have to vote things out.
Skillet. No, it's true. I have one skillet. I have one saucepan. Okay. I have a pressure cooker, and
oh my gosh, Becky, that's amazing.
I have an Instapot, an emulsifying blender, and a small food processor. So
that's pretty good set.
Yeah. And of course, some good knives. I have a good chef knife, a good paring knife, and a good serrated knife.
Good. Yeah. So you're equipped there. That's really good. Along your journey, have you entertained with anyone? Have you cooked for anyone or?
Yeah. So we've had this couple that we ended up kind of buddy boating with, and we would have them over for what we call sundowners, or we would have food on board. So,
oh, cool.
Yes, we have done that. And I think the things that I made for that one, I have this quinoa dish that I make that's like a Mexican quinoa with black beans and tomatoes and corn and stuff like that. So it's kind of an easy thing to make with boat ingredients, I call it.
Yeah.
And then I also, I think, cooked a chicken thing for them. But that didn't come out as good as the quinoa dish.
Well, that does happen, especially, you have the best excuse in the world because you're in a very small kitchen, very confined, very limited ingredients, and you've got to be really creative and inventive.
Yeah.
And I think you got to give yourself some credit for that. What other challenges do you face, like in the Caribbean? In my mind, food, I would think there would be fresh fruit everywhere. There would be fresh vegetables everywhere. That's what I would think. What's the reality?
There is fresh fruit and fresh vegetables.
Okay.
It's just the access to what kind of fresh fruit and vegetables you want. So
I see.
You can't go buy fresh spinach, for instance, or, I love cilantro, and
Yeah,
I
me too.
put it in a lot of things, and it's very hard to find, at least in the French islands that we've visited. I had a hard time finding cilantro. And when I did find the cilantro, then sometimes I couldn't find the other ingredient that I wanted to go with the cilantro. So
Yeah.
that could make, it makes meal planning more challenging, because you can't make a meal plan. It's almost like you have to go to the store and see what they have and then plan around that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's not like your typical grocery store is not on the islands, right? On most of the islands?
Well, we're in St. Martin right now, and the store here is amazing. It's just like anything at home. You can get anything and everything. But on some of the other islands, especially a place like Dominica, there is no grocery store. I mean, it's there's open air markets where you can buy cabbage and carrots and things like that, and fresh fruit. But again, it's like each station is selling the same exact foods.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And we have tried different vegetables, and it's almost like you're cooking more like the locals, right? It's what you're using, the ingredients that are accessible to you.
Any interesting vegetables that you discovered?
No, I'm going to mess up the name of it. It's like is it like choate or something like that? It's a squash, and we've had it a couple times, and I've prepared it differently. I guess when we were in Guadeloupe, this woman was saying you could grate it and almost make it almost like a cheese, like it just gets soft and melty.
Oh,
but I've sauteed it with, I think, just some thyme and onion and garlic or something like that. And it was It doesn't have a lot of flavor, the squash itself, but it kind of picks up the flavor of those spices and things you add to it. That was good. And then Ben wanted to try some taro root, because that was very prevalent.
Filling? Is it just like a filling dish? You're eating.
It's almost like potato-y.
Oh, okay. Got it. Or taro, like you said. Yeah.
Taro, yeah.
I like taro, actually.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that we tried.
Anything you like in the Caribbean? Any foods you really like?
Well, the fresh fruit, like the bananas, taste so much better than anything at home. And, I actually bought some cinnamon here, and just the Creole spices too are incredible. I, again, at an open air market, bought some Creole spice mix. And I tried to reproduce this chicken on board, but it didn't come out the same. I think partly because we didn't grill it. We have a grill, but we've never taken the grill out because it's a pain in the neck to set up. And we have this new canvas enclosure, and I would be afraid of setting it on fire or something.
Not practical to use a grill. Yeah. Yeah. On the boat. Yeah. That might be.
Yeah.
That might be a little scary. What about the markets? You were talking a little bit about the markets. Can you describe what an open air market is like in the Caribbean?
Yeah, so there's lots of tables and vendors that are selling all kinds of fruits and vegetables, or spice mixes, or different sauces and bottles. And sometimes there's more artsy tables that are selling shells, or handmade jewelry and stuff like that.
Is it mostly fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, mostly fruits and vegetables. Yeah, and sometimes they'll even package foods together. So they might have a section of cabbage with carrot and something else all bundled together and sold as a unit, or scallions and herbs that are tied together, that are sold together. So
interesting. And so how long have you been in the Caribbean, and which islands have you visited?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You don't know what to make for dinner again?
You want to explore new cuisines but you don't have time? What if you have new inspirations and we provide you with the ingredients and recipes? We know you want to travel, learn new foods, explore the world, but life's responsibilities keep getting in your way. What if you can bring those experiences to your home neatly packed into a box? Ladyboo Collective is a subscription service that finds real people from around the world to create beautifully curated assortments of recipes, ingredients, and cultural content. Not only do we include cultural ingredients, but also a set of detailed recipe cards with instructions on how to use them. Each box also has a QR code that when scanned takes you to tons more global exploration to immerse yourself in. Everything from film to lifestyle, art to history, it all can be found here. Live your life to the fullest. Subscribe now and don't miss out on the next cultural adventure. Ladyboo Collective. Always exploring.
So we left Hampton, Virginia, the end of October, and we sailed to Antigua, and we got there 14 days later.
Oh, wow.
And we visited Antigua, very briefly Barbuda, just north of Antigua, and we've been to Guadeloupe, Dominica, Martinique, and and the Saints are part of Guadeloupe, and then we're now
like St. Martin and okay,
and now we're in St. Martin.
Yeah, I think I went to St. Martin. I think I did a cruise to St. Martin a long time ago when I went to Florida to around Thanksgiving to visit Kathleen, my sister. And I think I went to St. Martin. It was Cozumel, St. Martin, and one other place. But I loved it. Oh my gosh, love the Caribbean. And but like I said, I don't think I could sleep on a boat. I just don't know if I could do it.
I will have to say I'm looking forward to sleeping in a big bed when we get back.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That must feel like are you ready to go back, or are you still in adventure mode?
I think I am ready to go back. But at the same time, I feel like the time has gone by very fast. So it's hard to believe that we're going back, that we're starting already this homeward stretch now. But yeah.
And you guys are about a year, is that about right? Or how long are we talking you've been in the Caribbean?
Yeah. No. So we got down here in November. So we've been cruising but we've been kind of sailing on the boat since June. But didn't leave for the Caribbean until the end of October. Wow. And like I said, we were with the Salty Dog group. So we left from Hampton, Virginia with about 80 other boats. And we were the smallest.
Other boats. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And we were the smallest boat to leave.
And you were all coming down to the Caribbean?
Most boats were heading to the Caribbean, and then there was a subset that were sailing to the Bahamas.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow. Did all of you get together on that years ago, or was that something that you did, 6 months before you were leaving? How long ago? I
think we decided we were going to use the Salty Dog Rally last summer or spring or summer. I think we just finally decided that it made sense for the social aspect, and also sort of there's a safety component as well. We have weather router help for the journey, so that you have people sort of watching you and saying, okay, there's a low pressure system here, you got to get below this latitude, that kind of thing. So
got it. I know you haven't eaten out much, but I know that our listeners would love to know if you ate in any restaurants, and what was that like?
Oh, yes. Actually, we recently had the boat hauled to have some work done. So while the boat was on the hard, I could not actually cook on the boat because I couldn't have.
Right. That would be challenging. So you got to reward yourself. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we've gone out to eat for lots of different places. So we went out for breakfast and just a typical, almost like diner atmosphere. It was expensive, but really, really good. Bob got a crepe, and I got eggs Benedict, and Ben got some waffle thing that had did it have like an omelet inside the waffle or something? The waffle that you got?
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
It had like an egg and
it had like, it was like
Okay.
It's interesting.
Okay.
So,
wow. But you ate at a fancy restaurant when you first came down. Bob sent me an email. I remember he said, you should check this place out and talk to him. I still haven't, but I'm going to follow up with them. It was very beginning of your trip, I think.
well, the Salty Dog group ate out at Le Brasserie in the Slipway in Antigua. It was a French restaurant, which was very good. There was actually a really good pizza place in Antigua that we ate at near the Catamaran Marina. That was really good. Bob's mission was also to have Caribbean lobster while we were down here, and that actually was harder to find than we thought. It was very expensive.
Wow.
And I had it a couple times, and it is very good, but Bob calls me a lobster snob, and I do prefer Maine lobster over Caribbean lobster. I feel like the Caribbean lobster texture is a little tougher.
It's different. Yeah, it is tougher. It's not as sweet either.
Yeah, right. It's not as sweet.
Yeah, it's not as sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, Maine lobster, though. But you get lobsters off the boat in Maine. I mean, you get them as fresh as possible. Most of us, at least in Seattle where I live, I mean, I have to ship them for hundreds of dollars, and they come back with broken antennas, and they're not as tasty. I've had Caribbean lobster. I like it. I had it on a cruise once, but I definitely, I have to agree with you. Maine lobster is the best in the world. There's just no comparison.
Yeah. So we've had lots of French food. Obviously our fair share of baguettes and croissants, pain au chocolat. And cheese and,
But mostly French, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, well, we spent a lot of time in the French islands. Yeah. Okay. And, yep.
So tell us, where would you go if you could pick two islands? Where would you go and what would you do?
I would definitely go back to Martinique. The hiking there is amazing.
Okay.
And they actually have a really good bus system so you can get around and see the island. So when we were in Guadeloupe, we didn't really find the bus system. It was harder to navigate the island, but Martinique was amazing, beautiful, just lush rainforest and waterfalls. And there's a volcano that we hiked, and just great food, and there was great company when we were there too. So I definitely would go back to Martinique. And the other place totally different that I feel like we kind of got gypped is going back to Barbuda, because we actually never really got a chance to visit that island. We spent an overnight and then had engine issues and had to go back to Antigua. So I might want to try to go back and explore that again. But if I had to pick another French island, I would say I would go back to the Saints as well. They're just so beautiful.
Where are you at right now in your journey, and what is it going to take for you to get back home?
So as I mentioned before, we're just starting sort of what I would call the homeward bound stretch. So we are going to be heading to St. John tomorrow, which is about another 100 nautical miles. And that'll take us about 20 hours to get there. So we're going to leave tomorrow around midday and then plan to arrive like Saturday morning. We want to arrive in daylight. So it's easy to see navigational markings and that kind of thing. So once we get to St. John, we'll be there about a month. And then we are going to sail north to Bermuda, which will take us about a week. And then from Bermuda, we'll have to wait for a weather window to sail back to Maine.
So describe for us what a weather window means.
So you're looking for ideal wind and sea state conditions that will make your passage more comfortable.
What is it like if it's not comfortable?
It's not comfortable.
Right.
So when we sailed
seas, high winds.
Yeah. So when we sailed from Guadeloupe to St. Martin, it wasn't that it was overly windy. It's more the sea state than the wind that tends to make the passage comfortable or not comfortable. So if the boat is really rolly, it's hard to sleep. And yeah, it's the sea state more than the wind.
Okay. Wow. I always wrap up the show and I talk about a little bit about cooking, but I always love to hear about kitchen disasters. But this is a special episode because it's really about travel, sailing, and food. So can you share one kitchen disaster and one sailing disaster with us?
All right. Well, kitchen disaster, the only thing that I can think of on the boat is that when we were doing the crossing from Virginia to Antigua, I had made some ratatouille and was heating it up. So that's the other thing on board is you have to be careful not to make food too hot because you don't want people burning themselves. And you also want to make sure that you're serving food in containers that are easy to eat from. So most of the time in like bowls, or I have little small like Yeti mugs with lids. So I was serving up, and this time I was not using the Yeti mugs. I had bowls, and I had a bowl of ratatouille, and the seas were kind of lumpy, and the bowl, somehow spilled, but there was ratatouille everywhere. It was like all over the stove, all over the cabinets. It was like, it just made a huge mess. And of course, when you're bouncing around down below, it just, the stove is gimbaled. So that means that you can have it so that the stovetop stays on the level, so that things won't spill. But I had moved this one bowl on top of that cutting board cover on top of the trash. And that was my mistake. And that's why it spilled all over the place. And yeah, it was a big mess.
Wow.
But luckily I had enough ratatouille to still feed everybody. So it wasn't a total disaster. It was just a mess more than a disaster.
And what about sailing?
So sailing, I have to say, I think that we've been pretty fortunate in just trying to be prepared. Although we just had the boat hauled, I'd say the closest thing to disaster happened when we were that one night up in Barbuda. We had a part of our engine crack to the point where I thought, oh my gosh, what if we have no engine now? Now what? Like, we're on a sailboat. Yes, we can sail the boat, and that's what we did do. We sailed back to Antigua, but I was like, are we going to have to repower the boat? Can we fix this problem? And luckily we were able to fix the problem, but that was pretty scary. And we were kind of thinking, oh great, now what? Like we kind of were in the early part of our trip, and what do we do now? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
you guys were resilient though. I mean, you figured it out. I was amazed watching this whole drama unfold on Facebook. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my gosh, they got help. They got it figured out.
Yeah. And to have,
amazing.
Yeah. To have friends help us. I mean, so we had to anchor under sail outside of Jolly Harbor. And then we had friends help tow us in because the yard's boat, actually their engine, on their outboard was out of commission. So luckily we had a friend that had a big enough boat and our boat is small enough that they were able to kind of hip tow us into the dock.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think the buddy system is the only way to go if you're traveling like that. You just never know what's going to happen.
Well, I think, and I think when people think, oh, you're living on a sailboat, you must be like hanging out on the beach all day, or that's like totally not that situation at all, right?
That's what I thought until I talked to Bob, and I was like, oh my gosh, so you're really frustrated and tired, but then you go take a break and you go hiking or you go scuba diving or snorkeling, but then you need time to recover. So when you get back, you're going to have to recover from your vacation.
Well, it's just like, this is our home now. So there's cooking, there's cleaning,
but it's much more complicated to get everything done. It probably takes twice as long, I would imagine, for some things. And, Bob was describing something to me too. Like, I almost feel like it's a sailing hack. And he talked about how do you clean the boat? So he gets in his scuba gear and he goes under the boat and he's scrubbing down the boat. Now, for people that are listening, they wouldn't know that you would have to do that. Why would you have to do that? Do you also scuba dive and go under and clean the boat, or is that just Bob doing that?
So I'm more of a snorkeler. So
Okay.
I will do like the top 2 feet. And we're talking about cleaning the underside of the boat. So
Yeah.
the reason why we have to scrub the bottom of the boat is that things grow on the boat, and that slows the boat down and can also interfere with water intake and, outflow and that kind of thing. So we have a little plastic scrubby brush and mask and snorkel and fins, and I, will scrub the top couple feet, and then Bob he'll get down deeper and get down really on the keel and spend more time cleaning around the prop and that kind of thing. But we had the boat hauled and repainted. There's a blade of paint on the bottom of the boat which helps prevent growth, but over time that paint has done its job and is no longer effective, and they really need to the scrubbing isn't enough. So we had gotten to that point. Yeah.
Oh, and since we mentioned it, snorkeling and scuba, what is it like to just go out on an adventure one day and go snorkeling or scuba in the Caribbean? What is that like?
Well, there's still locations that you need to go to get good snorkeling. So it's not like where I'm at right here. I'm not going to go snorkeling right where I am right here. But in Martinique, in Guadeloupe, there was definitely some really nice snorkeling places. The Jacques Cousteau has a marine preserve with some beautiful, it's nice to see the vibrant, alive coral and lots of fishies.
Colorful fish.
There's all different types of coral, the fan coral and
fire coral.
I don't know. I didn't, hopefully didn't see any fire coral.
No. Some in Belize, it was pretty cool. Yeah, I love the Caribbean. Probably the really great joy of it is to really be able to see that. And did you go from your boat? I mean, did you just like kind of anchor up and then just take your dinghy out and just go snorkeling and scuba?
So in the Jacques Cousteau Preserve, we took our boat out there. There's moorings out there. And then we swam over to the reserve area, and Marine Preserves had a dinghy tie-up, and on the tie-up buoy, they had pictures of all the different fish and had labeled it. Of course, it was in French, but it was still good. It was still nice to see. It was like, oh yeah, I saw that fish. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So as we wrap up, is there anything you can share with our audience, your friends, your family about taking this kind of trip of a lifetime and living aboard a sailboat for a year?
Well, if they've ever had thought about doing it, I think I would say do it, right? I think too many people will wait too long to have an experience like this. And like I said earlier, I think that we decided this is the time. We have our health. We have the time. Let's
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And if people want to connect to you, how would they find you if they want to talk about the journey or share an experience?
I think email would probably be the best way to contact me.
Okay.
And that is Rebecca Dugan. So REBECCA DUGAN 24@gmail.com.
Okay. And I'll have that in our show notes as well for our audience and anyone who wants to reach out and share experiences. Becky, I've been dreaming about doing this with you for a long time, and I am so glad that you're doing this with me because this is an amazing story. And I'm excited to share it with our audience and family and friends. And it's really special. And I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Voice4Chefs.